The air is still a single leaf, once green and full of life, trembles at the edge of a branch. The autumn wind breathes, and the leaf lets go. Slowly, it spins through the golden light, drifting down until it lands gently on the ground. For a moment, the world is quiet, and then another leaf falls, and another, and soon, the entire tree stands bare against the cold sky. We witness this every year, the changing of seasons, the slow but certain turning of life's wheel. And yet, when change comes to our own lives, when a job ends, when someone we love walks away, when time begins to show itself on our skin, we resist. We grasp for permanence, as if clinging to the branch will somehow stop the winter from arriving. But what if the very thing we resist is also our freedom? What if impermanence is not our enemy, but our teacher? Over 2,000 years ago, across the rivers of China and the mountains of India, sages and philosophers wrestled with this same question. The Buddhists called it impermanence. The Taoists saw it in the flowing water of the river, never the same twice. The Stoics of Rome spoke of memento mori, remember, you must die, not as a curse, but as an invitation to live fully. They all came to the same understanding. Life changes, everything fades, and in that truth lies a strange and powerful freedom. But here's the question for us today. In a world of deadlines, endless notifications, relationships that flare and fade, and a culture obsessed with youth and stability, how do we learn to see impermanence not as loss, but as liberation? Before we answer, let me tell you a story. It begins not in a monastery or a palace, but on a stormy coastline in Japan, over 400 years ago. The great poet Matsuo Basho stood watching the waves crash against the rocks. He carried only a small bag, a straw hat, and his writing brush. He had left behind the comforts of the city to wander the countryside, seeking wisdom in nature. That evening, he wrote a simple haiku. A summer river being crossed, how pleasing, with sandals in my hands. The poem seems almost trivial. A man holding his sandals while wading through a river. And yet, Basho captures something profound. The joy of adapting to the moment. The river flows, the journey shifts, and instead of clinging to how things should be, he embraces how they are. Impermanence is not just the falling leaf, or the passage of years. It's the river we wade through every single day. The question is, will we fight the current, or learn to walk with sandals in our hands? Across centuries and continents, wise voices whispered the same truth. Nothing stays the same. The Buddha, seated beneath the Bodhi tree in the stillness of India, saw that all beings suffer because they cling to what cannot last. He called it impermanence. A child grows old, a flower wilts, even the mountains wear away. To deny this is to live in illusion. To accept it is to touch freedom. He told his followers a story. A woman named Kissa Gautami lost her only child. Grief consumed her, and she begged the Buddha for medicine to bring her son back. The Buddha gently told her, "Bring me a mustard seed from a household untouched by death." She went from door to door, but every home had known loss. Only then did she understand. Death is universal. Change is universal. Her sorrow softened, not because the child returned, but because she saw she was not alone. Centuries later, in the flowing poetry of Lao Tzu, impermanence became water. Nothing in the world is as soft and yielding as water. Yet for dissolving the hard and inflexible, nothing can surpass it. The river never clings to a single shape. It bends, it twists, it wears down stone. Its strength lies in its willingness to flow. Taoism teaches that life, too, must flow. When we fight change, we grow rigid. When we yield, we discover a strength beyond force. And in the marble halls of Rome, the Stoics carried the same torch. Marcus Aurelius, emperor and philosopher, wrote in his private journal, "All things are in a process of change. You yourself are subject to ceaseless transformation. So is the whole universe." For the Stoics, to live was to remember that every possession, every honor, even life itself, was temporary. Not as a reason for despair, but as a reason for courage. If today is fleeting, then let us live it with clarity, with integrity, with love. From Buddhist temples to Taoist riversides to Roman palaces, the message echoed. Impermanence is not tragedy, it is the very fabric of existence. But why did these sages care so deeply about impermanence? Because they knew the danger of the opposite. Illusion. The illusion that we can hold on forever, that wealth will protect us, that youth will stay, that success, once won, is permanent. This illusion builds fragile lives, like castles of sand waiting for the tide. The ancients were not naive. They watched empires crumble, families scatter, harvests fail. They saw firsthand what we often try to hide behind glass screens and endless entertainment, that everything we love and everything we fear is temporary. But instead of despairing, they leaned closer. They asked, if everything changes, what can we do with this knowledge? The Buddha answered, let go of attachment and compassion will rise. Lao Tzu answered, flow with the Tao and peace will come. The Stoics answered, live with virtue and you will not fear loss. Different languages, different lands, but one truth. And yet here we are, in the 21st century, surrounded by technology, skyscrapers, medical miracles, and streaming services, still afraid of change, still shocked when life moves on. Why? Perhaps because impermanence is not an idea we simply know. It is something we must practice, like breathing, like walking, like crossing a river with sandals in our hands. And this brings us to today, to you, sitting here, listening. Maybe you've lost someone. Maybe you've watched a relationship slip away. Maybe you've looked in the mirror and wondered when the years began to write themselves across your face. If so, then you are exactly where the sages began, at the edge of impermanence. But what you do next, that is the story. Let me take you to a battlefield in ancient China. The warlord Shang Yu stood surrounded. His army, once mighty, had been broken. He had burned his own ships earlier that year, so his men would fight with no retreat. Now, at the banks of the Wu River, defeat pressed in on him. He looked into the rushing water and saw not just the end of a battle, but the end of his era. The chronicles say he sighed and said, heaven has deserted me. Then, he took his own life. Shang Yu clung to permanence, to victory, to control, to the idea that his power would last forever. When change came, it shattered him. His story became a warning. Fight the river, and you will drown. But there was another general, years later, who saw things differently. Liu Bang, who would go on to found the Han dynasty, embraced change. When he lost battles, he retreated and regrouped. When fortune shifted, he shifted to. We did not cling to glory or despair. He flowed with circumstance, and his dynasty endured for centuries. History is not just the rise of empires, it's the story of impermanence. And yet, the lesson is not locked in the past. It is happening to us every day. Picture this. A woman in her 30s sits in her apartment in New York City. Her phone buzzes with another notification. Her company is downsizing. Her role, the one she has built her identity around for years, is gone. At first, she panics. Who is she without her title, without her daily routines, her colleagues, her paycheck? The ground beneath her feels like it's collapsing. But slowly, she remembers something her grandmother once told her. Even the darkest winter eventually turns to spring. Instead of rushing into despair, she breathes. She updates her resume. She takes long walks in Central Park. She calls old friends. A month later, she interviews for a position she never would have considered before: remote work with more freedom, more creativity. She gets it. Losing her job was painful, but in its ending, something new began. This is impermanence, not as a philosophy in a dusty book, but as real life. The end of a chapter is not the end of the story. Think about the relationships you've had, the ones that made you laugh until your ribs ached, the ones that broke you into 1,000 pieces. At the time, you might have thought, this will last forever, or, when it ended, I will never recover. And yet you did. You changed, you loved again, or maybe you learned to love yourself in a way you never had before. Impermanence does not erase what came before, it transforms it. Let's bring this even closer. Imagine standing at the ocean's edge, toes buried in the sand. The waves rush in, cool and alive, then retreat, leaving only foam. No wave is the same, yet the sea endures. Life is this tide, moments arriving, moments fading. Here's the paradox. The more we try to freeze a wave, the more it slips through our fingers. But the more we let it come and go, the more we can feel its beauty. And here's another truth. Impermanence is not just about endings, it is about beginnings. The pain you feel today will not last forever. The joy you feel today will not last forever. But because of that, because nothing lasts, you are free to embrace it fully, to drink deeply while it's here. This is why Zen masters laugh easily, why Stoics walk calmly into storms, why Taoists write poetry about rivers. They understood. The gift of impermanence is presence. You don't have to wait until you're re-standing on a battlefield or sitting alone after a breakup to practice it. You can start small. Notice the steam rising from your morning coffee. It will vanish in seconds. Watch the sunset tonight. The sky will never look the same again. Hear a friend's laughter. The exact sound will never repeat. These moments, precisely because they are fleeting, are sacred. And so, the question returns, will you fight the river, or walk through with sandals in your hands? So what does impermanence look like in our world, this fast, buzzing, digital world, where every day feels like a sprint? Let's begin with stress. Think about the last time you felt overwhelmed, your inbox exploding, your boss pressuring you, your mind racing at 2 a.m. In the middle of it, stress feels permanent, like a prison you'll never escape. But pause, breathe, remember, no storm lasts forever. Even the most violent thunderclouds eventually dissolve into blue skies. When stress comes, tell yourself, this too is impermanent. That phrase alone can loosen the grip of panic. It doesn't erase the problem, but it reminds you that the feeling is temporary. Suddenly, the weight is lighter. Now, consider money. In America, we're told to chase more income, more savings, more stuff. But money, too, is impermanent. Fortunes rise and fall, stocks soar and crash, inflation bites. The Stoics would say, never place your peace in something you can lose overnight. Place it instead in how you live, how you act, how you love. When you see your paycheck as temporary, you start using it differently. Not just to hoard, not just to impress, but to nourish your life and the lives of others. To buy experiences, not just possessions. To invest in what endures beyond numbers on a screen. Wisdom, friendship, health. Let's move to productivity. Many of us fear wasting time. We cram our calendars, track our hours, push ourselves to exhaustion. But impermanence tells us, time cannot be hoarded. Every second slips away, whether you cling to it or not. The goal is not to trap time, it is to live it. Imagine approaching your day like a Zen monk sweeping leaves. He knows that tomorrow, more leaves will fall. The task is never done, yet he sweeps with full presence, because the act itself is the reward. What if you treated your work like that? Not as a desperate climb to finish everything, but as a practice moment by moment, breath by breath. And then there are relationships, perhaps the hardest arena for impermanence. We want love to last forever, friendships to never fade, families to stay unchanged. But life doesn't work that way. People grow, people leave. Even when they stay, they change. This can feel heartbreaking, but it is also beautiful. Think about your first best friend. You might not talk anymore, yet that friendship shaped who you are. Think about a past partner. The relationship ended, yes, but it taught you how to love, or how not to. It carried lessons you carry still. When we accept impermanence in relationships, two things happen. We treasure people more deeply, because we know nothing is guaranteed. And we forgive more easily, because we see that holding grudges against change is like yelling at the tide. Here's a practice. Next time you hug someone you care about, imagine it's the last time. Not to darken the moment, but to brighten it. Feel the warmth fully. Speak the words you'd regret leaving unsaid. This is how impermanence turns ordinary days into sacred ones. Now, let's turn this lens back onto you. Your body, your face, your life. The mirror might show wrinkles, scars, gray hair. At first, we mourn these changes, but impermanence says, every mark is proof you've lived, proof that you've laughed, fought, survived, loved. To resist age is to resist being alive. Instead, see your changing self the way you'd see the changing seasons. Spring is lovely, but so is autumn, so is winter, with its quiet beauty. Why should your life be any different? Impermanence is not meant to rob you of comfort, it's meant to set you free. Free from the desperate need to hold everything still. Free to dance with change instead of fighting it. So the next time you feel panic rising, ask yourself, what if this is just a passing wave? The next time you look at your bank account, ask, what if my worth is not written in numbers? The next time you feel time slipping away, ask, what if the point is not to keep it, but to live it? The next time you fear losing someone, ask, what if love matters not because it lasts forever, but because it is here now? Impermanence is not the thief of joy. It is the reason joy exists at all. The leaf falls, the river flows, the sun sets, and tomorrow it rises again. Everything you see, everything you feel, everything you are, it is all changing, moment by moment. And that is not a reason for despair. It is the invitation of life itself. Impermanence asks us to loosen our grip, to stop clutching at what is already gone, to stop fearing what has not yet arrived, to stand fully in the only place that has ever been real, this moment. So when life shifts beneath your feet, remember, you are not broken. You are simply moving with the current. And in that current, there is freedom. The Buddha, the Taoists, the Stoics, they all whispered the same truth across time. You cannot stop change, but you can learn to walk with it. So breathe, look around you, notice the sound of the wind, the light on the walls, the person beside you, or the silence that holds you. This will never happen again. That's what makes it precious. And if this message touched you, share it, subscribe, leave a comment below. What change in your life has shaped you the most? Because in sharing our stories, we remind each other, we are all walking this river together.